Hi. So, it's time for another wrap up. I'm sorry if I sound sick. It's because I am. March was a weird month, and I feel like I said that the last 2 months, but March was really just, I don't know. The first 2 weeks I was busy like prepping for my cosplay I did, and then the last 2 weeks I was sick, and I still am sick, and I don't know what it is. It's like a cold, and patient first was no help in deciding if I needed an antibiotic or not. So I'm still debating starting it. But anyway, all that to say, I only read 7 books in March, and 2 of them were books I finished like March 2nd, because I mostly read them in February. But anyway, it is what it is. You know, it'd be like that sometimes. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go through the books I read in March. I read 3 audiobooks, 3 physical books, and 1 ebook. I'm trying to decide what order I want to go over them in. Well, my boyfriend is doing yard work, and so if you can hear the leaf blower, I'm sorry, but I just don't feel like waiting for him to be done. So we're just gonna get started. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the physical books, I think, just get them out of the way. The first one I finished in March was the one I was reading at the end of February, which was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This was her first, not fantasy. Like some people are like fantasy. It's not. After reading it, it's like not. It's just paranormal romance. Basically the plot of this is the main character, her name is Misery. Yes. Misery. And she is a vampire, and her dad is some kind of vampire in charge. I don't really know what his title is. Basically there's like the vampires and the werewolves and the humans, and they're all kind of like separate factions, and over the years they've done different things to try to make like peace treaties or whatever. And so she has to marry the pack leader of the main were group. I don't know if he's in charge of like everyone or if he's just their pack leader, whatever. He is someone high up. So she has to marry him, and then she has to go live with him in his house for a year, and she agrees to do it. And you find out why in the book. I'm not gonna like say that because I feel like that's a little bit of a spoiler, but basically this book is a weird mixture of things, and not necessarily in a bad way, but the reason she agrees to marry him, that reason is like a mystery plot line throughout the book. Like, I mean, you find out the reason, but then it's like it's tied to like a mystery. Anyway, and I really like that aspect actually, because I am someone who really likes mysteries and like thrillers and stuff. This is not in the thriller realm, but it definitely has a mystery, like a strong mystery plot. It's also very political because of like, you know, it's like marriage alliance type thing, and usually I'm not super into politics, but like that was like kind of interesting to read. The romance was so weird because it didn't start until like halfway. Like, I'm dead serious. They get married like in the first chapter, and the romance, like, it's a marriage of convenience, so it's like they have to like get to the romance, but like it was just such a slow burn. But then like after that, and I was really liking this book because I thought it was a good mixture of the mystery and the politics and the romance. But then I got near the end and I decided that paranormal romance is not for me. That final sex scene was just like too much. And if you dare, look up what nodding is. Yeah, just not for me. And I'm not saying I'll never read another paranormal romance, because I might, especially if Ali Hazelwood writes another one. I will definitely read it because I really love Ali Hazelwood's writing. Like, that was really good still. Like, I like the way she writes characters and the witty banter, and like she's really good at writing. It's just I don't think this genre is for me, and so I think I landed on 4 stars for a rating because I did enjoy reading it. So yeah, that was the first book I finished in March, I think, because it was like a spillover from February. This is what my book club read in February. So the next physical book I read in March was By a Thread by Lucy Score. And this is what I was reading most of the month. Probably took me 2.5 to 3 weeks to read this. Nothing wrong with it. It is just a bit of a brick. This is my first Lucy Score book I've read. So the plot of this one is this girl named Allie is working multiple jobs, and at one of her waitressing jobs, this guy comes in and he's like a dick to her. And so she's kind of rude back, and then he gets her fired, and his mom is with him, and his mom owns like a fashion magazine company. And so she hires her to work for her because she feels bad that her son got her fired. And so now she has to work with that guy because he also works for his mom. And he's like her boss. Obviously, there's a little bit of romance between them because, I mean, it's the plot of the book. It's like enemies to lovers, I guess, but they're like kind of into each other from the get-go. Like it's like they they were so rude to each other in that first encounter, but like in their heads, they were like attracted to each other, you know? So it's like enemies to lovers. It's also like a work romance. I just found a cat claw on my phone. Thanks, cats. The first part of the book had me triggered because she is a graphic designer waitressing. And then even after that, she is a graphic designer working as like an office admin, waitressing on the side. Very triggering. Very triggering. But anyway, I did like this book. It's something I knew going into it. It was going to be smut heavy, and I didn't know that. But I was still taken a little bit aback. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like not my kind of thing. And like I've said before, I don't mind smut as long as there is like feelings with it. Like I want to see that they love each other, they care about each other, they do sweet things for each other. Like I like that kind of love. And I feel like there was very little of that in here and just a lot of smut. And it's a bit of a slow burn, but then once you're there, it's just like smut, smut, smut. Like it's just like, it's like so much smut. And like they did care about each other, which leads me to my next criticism is I like when a guy is protective. Like I like that trope. Like I like the touch her and I'll kill you trope. But I don't like when that protectiveness turns into controllingness. And I feel like Dom was controlling. He was very much like, I'm gonna tell you this, you're gonna do this. Like, I don't know. And I feel like that was just like, I know there's a fine line in between protective and controlling because like a lot of times the controllingness comes from being protective. But for me, I just feel like a lot of this book crossed that line in my opinion. And I didn't like him when he was behaving in that way. But there were still moments I did really like because like I said, I do think they cared about each other. I feel like, and I wish they would have showed it more than they did, but it's just like not that kind of book, I guess. I don't know, like Dom did do a lot for her because he was like protecting her and caring about her and I liked that, but it was just like I don't know, he was too alpha male for me, for my taste. However, there's like 2 or 3 epilogues in this book. I don't know. I just kept like having stuff at the end. One of the parts of the ending made me cry. Like I actually cried and I hated that this book made me cry because it was something Dom did. It was a good kind of cry. It was like a aww kind of crying and I kind of hate that he made me cry in that way. But I think I decided on 4 stars for this book. Yeah, that's what I put. 4 stars because I liked it. I didn't love it. I probably will read more of her books because I did really like her writing style. I liked the banter between the characters and I liked the main girl. Like I did like her like personality and her, I don't know, I like the way she was written. So the last physical book I read in March was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book I'm reading in the Throne of Glass series. I know there is debate about where to start, whether you start with the prequel or start with book 1. I followed what Destiny Sidwell said and started with the prequel. So that's what I did, and it's too late to go back now. I have only read A Court of Thorn and Roses, and I've never continued that series, so I wanted to give A Throne of Glass a try. So I started with this one, and basically this book is about this girl named Selena, I think is her name, and she is an assassin. She's only 17. I think she turned 17 in this book, so she's young. And she works for this man. Like, her master is, like, in charge of the Assassins Guild she's part of, and she, like, reports to him, she is indebted to him kind of thing, so she has to like follow out orders from him. And she's an assassin and she's like the best assassin there is. Anyway, so this book basically just follows her. It's 5 short stories and it just follows her on this journey. And like the first story starts with her and this other assassin going to this town to meet with a pirate lord and do a deal with him. And then what happens in that town like leads into the rest of the short stories, and it's kind of like they're short stories, like they're separate, but there's like a through line between them, you know? The end of this book sets up for where I guess the first book picks up, based off the summary I read of the first book. And I really, really love this book. In the past, I haven't always liked collections of short stories when they're part of a series. I'd rather read one full novel, but the way this one was written, it was like the short stories just like bled together, and they were definitely like their own separate stories, but because it was like that plot line going through all of them, like one led into the next one and led into the next one, it almost felt like it was just like a novel. Like it was almost like a novel with like parts or chapters. Like it felt like that. It was very joined together, and I really, really liked that about it. And I really, really love the main character, Selena. I love her personality. I love her grit. I love her heart. I just really, really like her, and I'm looking forward to seeing her in the rest of the series. Gosh, that is so loud. I'm really looking forward to seeing her in the rest of the series, and I decided on 4.5 for the rating for this book because I really, really liked it, but I didn't necessarily get a 5-star feeling. I'm very picky about 5 stars, but I really, really love this book, and I'm very excited to go into the next book. I just don't know when I'll get to it. These 2 books I read in a video that's not out yet because I have one more book to read for it, and I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but hopefully that video will be out in like a week or so. It just depends on how long it takes me to read that last book so I can put the video together and be done with it. But yeah, so those will be in a reading vlog coming out soon, hopefully. So on that note, I will start talking about the audiobooks I read in March. So the first one I read in March was like a spillover from February, and I reread A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas because I read that book for the first time in 2021, and I just wasn't a big fan of it. Let me just stop and tell you what the book's about first, I guess. So basically, this book follows a girl named Feyre, I think is how you pronounce her name, and she is, I think, like Katniss in the beginning of the Hunger Games. She like provides for her family, and then one day when she's out in the wood, she kills this wolf that ends up being a fae. And so this fae, I don't know how to describe him. He comes to their house and he's like, you killed a fae, you either die or I take you back to my kingdom, as like that's part of the treaty, whatever. And she's like, okay, take me, I guess. And so she goes back to his like kingdom with him, and now it's like Beauty and the Beast. Thank that plot. She's like stuck there with him for the rest of her life. That's the plot of the book. There's obviously a love story there, and it gets kind of smutty. And there's obviously stuff happening with the fae and the world, like it's a whole series. So I did not really like this book the first time I read it. Like I didn't dislike it, but I gave it 3.5 stars when I read it for the first time. And like I liked it enough, I wanted to continue the series to like see what people like rave about. And I tried to read the second one a couple times, like maybe 3 or 4 separate times. I tried listening to it. I got halfway, maybe tried again. I don't know. I tried the ebook. I started from where I was in the audiobook. I also started from the beginning, couldn't get into it. I decided that I think I just need the physical book if I'm going to continue the series, but I just haven't gotten around to doing that. So I thought if I reread the first book, maybe it would make me want to read it more, but I kind of just still feel the same way. I'm just not super into it. Okay, I know you're gonna say this gets better. I know, okay? It's so toxic. I really don't like what Feyre and Tamlin have, and I know the rest of the books resolve that, but it's just hard for me to get past to continue the series. And even like, how do I talk about this? Because I've gotten some spoilers for the series. How do I keep this spoiler free? I know where the love story goes, but from what was introduced in the first book, I don't like that direction either. And that's why I'm leaving it at. If you read the book, I think you can tell what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. Like, I just, like, you know, and I'm not super into fantasy anyway, so it's like it's hard for me to go into the book knowing that I did not like the love story in the first one. But I don't know, I do still plan on continuing the series, but right now I think I'm gonna like Throne of Glass better, so I think I'm gonna pursue that series first and then maybe go back to A Court of Thorn and Roses. Like, I don't know, that's where I'm at. So that was a tangent that you didn't ask for, but that was the first audiobook I read. Darn, all the audiobooks I read were rereads. The next one I finished was The Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare. So this is one of the series in the Shadowhunter series. It's one of the like more recently published ones. Like it's not done yet. It will be a trilogy, but only 2 are out so far. This one follows Magnus Bane. He is a warlock that is in all of the other books because he, you know, is a warlock. He can like live forever. So he is in all of the time periods. And he's one of my favorite characters. I really, really love Magnus. I've always liked him since I started reading the books when I was like 12. He's always been my favorite. He is just very fun. And keeping this spoiler free for like the rest of the series, but I feel like everyone already knows, it's him and his partner who will remain nameless. That's the series kind of follows them. And so the first one takes place, I think the first one takes place after the Mortal Instruments 6 books. I think all 6 are over is when it takes place, and they are on like a vacation because they just were part of a war. So now they're like, let's go on vacation to Paris, and of course they can't like stop working, and so they come across a thing and they end up like working their whole like vacation. I don't typically rate Cassandra Clare books because they're like my favorite series. It's really hard for me to rate Shadowhunter books, but this was definitely not a favorite of mine even when I read it for the first time. And I don't even know why, because like I said, Magnus is one of my favorite characters, and so I like his plot. Like I like knowing more about him. I like his plot with his significant other. I like their relationship. I like learning more about them and seeing their relationship progress. I think that the storyline plot is fine. I like all the side characters that are in this book and introduced in this book. I like all of it, but then it's just like the whole book put together is just not my favorite. And it's like not bad. Like I still love Cassandra Clare, but like I don't know. This series is just not my favorite. And I feel the same way about the sequel too. Anyway, it's just not my favorite in the Shadowhunters world, and I love the Shadowhunters world. It is my favorite series. Like that is the world that I love the most. Like some people have Sarah J. Maas. I have Shadowhunters, okay? That's my thing. But I don't know, that one's just like not my favorite. Which leads me to my next book that I read in March, which was A Clockwork Prince. So that is another reread in the Shadowhunters world. It is the second book in the Infernal Devices series, which is a prequel series to Immortal Instruments. This is the second one. So this one follows Tessa and Jim and Will. If you've heard that trio, this is their series set in the 1800s. Basically, Tessa like was raised as like human, but then she finds out she's part of the shadow world because Will and Jim save her from this place, and then she's just figuring out how she's part of the world, and then there's a bad guy. And I can't really, this is a sequel, so I can't really go into what it's about because it's like related to the first one. But yeah, I said this last month. Like I read the first one last month, and I know I said all this last month. Jim is one of my favorite characters. Him and Magnus, favorite characters. This is the series he's introduced in. So that's why I'm rereading it, because I was like, I need Jim Carceres in my life again. And I just love Jim. Like that's all I have to say is I love Jim and I want more of him. So that's my reread for that book. I still really want to sit down and do a video talking about Shadowhunters World and the reading order and just whatever. I just haven't gotten around to it because I really want to take my time to really dive in deep and explain it well, and I just haven't had the time or energy to do that. The last book I read in March was the third Shatter Me book, whatever it's called. Ignite Me. It's gonna sound like a broken record because this is the third month I read Shatter Me books this year. But basically, Shatter Me is about, if you don't know, Shatter Me is about this girl named Juliet. She has this ability where if she touches you or you touch her, she kills you. And she's like in this asylum, and then she gets like taken out of the asylum because she's going to be used as a weapon. And then there's like a rebellion, and it's a dystopian fantasy type book. You know, all the YA books are like that. Anyway, this is the third one. So I can't really get into the plot, obviously, because third book. I really liked the first half of this book. Like I liked it more than the rest of the books. And then the like rebellion plot kicked up, and it was outlandish. And like I was literally just like, what am I reading? Because she's 17 and like her like plan for the rebellion, I was just like, girl, you are 17, what are you talking about? Like it kind of just pissed me off. And after that, I was like, I'm just here to keep reading. And then the romance I was really into in this book, I didn't thought this day would come, but I like Warner now. I really did not think I was going to like Warner, but it didn't. It made me like him. It told me his backstory. It told me what's going on in his head and what he's feeling and the reasons behind his actions and how his actions aren't really his actions. And now I like Warner, and I don't like that I like him, but I really like him, and I like them together. And I don't know. That's just where we're at. Another thing I didn't like about this book is like they're exploring the extent of Juliet's ability, and I think they took things too far. Like, I just don't think her ability would have the extent that this book said it did, and if it did, I don't think she would get to that point within a week or two. Like, I just feel like it was really, it's just unbelievable what she can do and how quickly she got there. And I don't know. I still think I think that I'm gonna I think I want to say I thought the third book was better than the second one, but I don't know, because all of them are just meh. Like, I know I sound obsessed with them, and I'm reading them at a pretty good rate because I read the first book, the first novella, the second book, the second novella, and now the third book, all within 3 months. And these are books I'm like getting from the library and like waiting for my holds for. These are the only ebooks I've read this year, by the way, is just Shatter Me. I've like started a couple other books, but like haven't finished them. I've like only been reading Shatter Me. But they're just meh. Like, they're all like 3 or 3.5. Like, I don't think I will ever rate one higher than that. This book, the first half, I was leaning towards 4 until that rebellion plot kicked in. And then I was like, never mind. We're going back down to a 3.5. That said, I'm waiting for my hold for the 4th one. There's that. Anyway, that's what I read this month. Like I said, it was a rough month. And that's all I got through. And that's more than I like thought I would read. I read Assassin's Blade and Ignite Me the last week of the month. And sorry for how I've been in this video. Like I said, I am sick. I probably sound rough. I probably look rough. And I probably like am a little unhinged. I don't know. I need to take a nap. But we're at the end of the video now, so there's that. Yeah, I hope I have a better reading month in April. I'm kind of just playing catch up in April because I don't read that much, and so if I have like a video idea for books to read, that is like my entire reading month basically. So in February, my boyfriend picked my reads, and then in March, that video hasn't come out yet. But that was like what my reads were. And so in April, my plan is to just like catch up on books I need to read. Or need to read. I don't need to read anything. And then in May, that's when I'll start Throne of Glass probably. Yeah, okay, we're at the end of the video. I'm sorry if I talked like way too much. This should be my shortest wrap up because it's only 7 books, but I don't know. I kept talking. But yeah, maybe you'll want to watch more. I don't know, but please do. And yeah, okay, bye.